Hi gang, Rob here. It is the afternoon of 3 March 2019. Coming to you with a product review, not of a knife, not of a flashlight, not of a gun, not of a sharpening system, but a sharpening accessory. You see before the camera a new product line by Edgepro for Edgepro. They work with the Apex and the Professional sharpening system. These are an array of the new Diamond Matrix sharpening stones from Edgepro. I'm going to get these out of the way here for just a moment so I can introduce for you the reason why, at least from my point of view. So most of you know, if you're Edgepro users, that your system is going to come with an array of stones. You see here the 220, the 400, and the 1000. These are alumina based bound stones that start out about that thick and end up about that thick. These are used and maintained just like natural or other manufactured stones. As you use them, they give up their abrasive as the binder breaks down, exposing fresh abrasive, which is different than a product like this, which is, what is this, a 120 grit, I think, plate from Chef Knives To Go, made to fit the Edgepro Apex and Edgepro Professional. And this is sort of the diamond stone that we're used to and have been for, gosh, I don't know, the last 20-25 years or so. These are diamond particles of a specific size, basically glued onto a piece of steel. And you guys know, if you use these, whether you're Edgepro users, Wicked Edge users, Lansky Diamond, KME Diamond, any of those, that once you either A, dull the cutting edges of those diamond particles, or B, they come off the substrate, the stone is useless. You can't flatten them to expose new abrasive. There's one layer. Okay, I don't particularly like that. I keep a 120 around. I think it's 120, maybe 140, just for reprofiling. Okay. Other stones that I've tried and are available for the Edgepro are these. These are Chaucera stones. They're really, really expensive, and I think they're very soft, meaning if you sharpen with some degree of aggression, as I'm prone to do, they dish quickly. You have to flatten them a lot, and they're used up rather quickly, which is alarming considering how much they cost. And then there's these I've tried. These are the Sharpening glass stones. A couple different grits. I think we got, well, that's not a 120. I don't know. What is that? I don't know what grits these are. It's been so long since I've used them. A couple things that you're going to notice using the Sharpening glass. They cut well, fairly well, on some steels. They do tend to load up. They're difficult to flatten. They come very thick. I don't love them though. Here's why I don't love them. They're very hard. The binder seems to be very hard, which means when they're flat, they cut great. When they're not flat, they don't cut very well. And when they start to get out of flat, or if the stone, if the next lower grit than the one you're using now wasn't very flat, and there's some variations in the surface of what you've left, makes it very difficult for the next stone to clean up the scratches, especially as you get to the finer grits, because the substrate, or I'm sorry, the binder doesn't give at all. And those of you who have experienced the frustration of cleaning up scratches with a Sharpening glass stone know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's another thing. On modern super steels, especially very hard super steels with lots of vanadium carbide, they tend to gall. So you might be cruising along with, upper grit stone, a 4,000 grit probably Sharpening glass stone. You think you're getting a high polish, and all of a sudden it starts to turn brown. I'm not sure what's causing that, whether there are carbides tearing out and oxidizing, but I've just had terrible luck with these. And as you can see, both of these have big cracks in them. If you drop these stones onto any kind of a hard surface for more than 3 or 4 inches, they crack. If the stone is a different degree of flatness from the backing plate and you put any pressure on them, they crack just from using them. I think that's why they make them thick, to give them some more stability. But every one of these I've ever owned is cracked before it's ever gotten halfway used. And when they get down to about halfway used, they crack because they aren't stable. Okay, so, and they're also very expensive compared to an Edgepro alumina stone. So, you know, after some experimenting for a few years, I just kept cruising along with the Edgepro alumina stones, and they present their own set of problems when you get into those super hard super steels. They just don't cut well. They just don't cut well. The abrasive in the alumina stones isn't as hard as the carbides in a modern super steel. So carbide tear out, poor finish quality, all that stuff. So Edgepro was aware of these trials and tribulations. Enter the Diamond Matrix Stone from Edgepro. So you're getting all the benefits of this single layer bonded on steel diamond, which is diamond abrasive, but an added benefit that these stones are, as you can see, thick. They're not as thick as an alumina Edgepro stone, but they're thick enough to be flattened and resurfaced. Okay, very, very cool. So let me tell you kind of what I've experienced with these. The resin binder seems to be relatively soft. Soft, not like it gives up its abrasive, wears away and dishes like a Chicera stone, but it's like rubber. It's like a very hard rubber. It's a resin compound, meaning it gives. It makes it easy to clean up irregular scratch patterns from previous grits because it gives. It's very cool. It does tend to load up. Here is one of my old 1100 grit matrix stones that I've put on the discard pile just because it got thin, and especially at the edges you can see where the backing plate is visible. So this is kind of what happens when you use them. They don't give up their abrasive by sharpening unless you gouge them, and you can see some gouges in this area again because sometimes I get a little aggressive. They give enough to polish out scratches from irregular surfaces left from previous grits, which is pretty cool. They do load up though. Using water during sharpening, although it's not necessary for these stones to be saturated because they're not like that. They don't absorb water. The water, especially if you have a little dish soap in it, does prolong the life of the surface as far as loading goes. And I'll show you how I clean them here in a minute. But this is what happens as you sharpen a knife. And this is probably one knife's worth of load up on this 1100 grit matrix stone. And as they load up, much like the old polishing tapes do, or the Mylar films, they become pretty useless. So you got to clean them. That is a small price to pay, let me tell you. Well, here's the other kind of stuff. This is the other stone I meant to discuss and didn't. This is an Edgepro Mylar polishing tape. You can see what happens. Okay, you dig a tip, you tear a stone. The recurves eat them up bad. They last one, maybe two knives, and they're, what are they, like $1.50 a piece or something if you break it down. They were good in the beginning, but oh, how much better these matrix stones are. So what I find with these is that My sharpening time is far reduced. You know, let's say I have my 1100 matrix stone clean up scratches from a 650, where that would have taken, to go from 600 to 1000 in the alumina stones, would have taken maybe 100 strokes to clean up a given knife edge. 50 for the matrix. The finish quality after that 50, better than the finish quality after 100, going from 600 to 1000 on the old aluminum stones. So my time per knife has been reduced, the quality of my finish has been improved, and I've been able to eliminate a step. Okay, I still use, by the way, a 250 alumina. I'm sorry, a 220 alumina for my first stage of sharpening most knives, unless they need a heavy reprofile with the 120 or 140 diamond. I use this because it's a Hagen stone. It gets dished a little bit. They're $9 a piece, unmounted. I mount my own, and I don't really care about finish quality at this point. So rather than paying a lot more money for the equivalent matrix stone, this still works fine. But where I used to use, let me see here, where I used to go 220, 400, I'm talking about modern super steels, 600, 1000, and then what were they, 22,000 or 2,300 polishing tape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm 220, 650 matrix, 1100 matrix, 2300 matrix. So not only has each stone taken less time and fewer strokes, I got a better finish when I'm done. Okay, what's the downside, you're asking? What's the downside? Well, the downside is they're not cheap. There is an 80 grit matrix stone available, and you'll notice the coarser they are, the more expensive they are. $74. There's a 250 grit available for $66, and then where I come in is the 650 at $56, the 1100 at $56, and the 2300 at $56. You can go up to 4,000 grit for $56, and then there's also a prototype I've got floating around somewhere, a 6,500 grit stone, but I don't see that on their website. I think that's also $56. Here's what I find though, guys. Over the 2300, I go to strops. I'm cleaning up my polish better with a strop than I do with a flat stone, and I'm dressing my apex at what, 2 micron and half a micron. I don't really need to go to the 4,000 to get there. Okay. What's the downside? Well, they're expensive. I can do alumina stones unmounted for $9 a stone, and they'll sharpen, you know, averaging out the grits. Some last longer, some last less long, but they'll do about 60 knives for $9. These will do, and they do need to be flattened, but before they start showing their edges, I'll do up to 150 knives. So 2.5, maybe 3 times as long of life on the matrix stones. So when you consider the time saved, the longer life, it really kind of balances out the cost, and I get a better product, and I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot happier. Sharpening is more fun with these. An asterisk at the end of that. If I'm doing carbon steel and nickel Damascus, if I'm doing plated carbon steel, or even some of the less super, shall we say, smelted stainless steels, I still use the alumina stones, especially on problem edges like funky recurves where they're really going to eat a lot of stone on the edges. I'll use alumina. But for most of what I do, For most of what I do, the Matrix Diamond Stones from Edgepro are my go-to. And I've been working with Cody and Ben at Edgepro since these were in the prototyping stage, just using them, giving them feedback. I really, really like them. I really like them. Now let's go to cleaning. I'm going to move the camera around a little bit and pick you up. And I'll clean up a worn out stone just to show you how that works. Be right back. Okay guys, so here is that same worn out 1100 matrix stone from Edgepro. And if I were going to sharpen a knife with this, I'd want to get rid of that metal on top. I'm going to get the stone wet, grab my trusty can of Ajax, soft scrub works too, sprinkle it on the stone. This is a piece of 320 grit sandpaper that I retired after convex sharpening, and now I'm going to use it to get rid of my fouling. Doesn't take very long. There you go. Pretty simple. Okay, I bet somebody's asking about flattening. How do you flatten? Well, I got a little system and I'll tell you about it. But first let me show you. This is a bag of the aluminum oxide Edgepro sells specifically for cleaning the resin bond diamond matrix stones. It says sprinkle a little on a sheet of glass with water, grindstones in a circular motion. Here's how I do it. I dressed my 220 alumina and my other alumina stones if I have them needing to be dressed. And I use this, I forget what this is. What is this? 140 grit diamond that Edgepro sells. It's more aggressive than this 240. So I'll use this to flatten my 220 and my other aluminas, and then I'll sort of refresh with this. I've broken this down a little now. I'll refresh with this 240 aluminum oxide, and then I'll finish the flattening job on my matrix stones. And then just to give them a little nicer, cleaner finish that's going to create less scratches, I'll go back to my cleaning method with soft scrub or Ajax and a piece of worn out sandpaper. And that's kind of the drill. So to wrap up, if you're an Edgepro user and you're sharpening, let's say more frequently than casually, so you use your knives a lot, or you sharpen knives for your buddies, or if you're a professional sharpener like me, these will make you very, very happy. Well worth the money. Love them. That is all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the word is sharp.